when we meet. And please be respectful of the server's time at the end of our meeting, which is 9 p.m. They still have to clean up and close up, so I thank you in advance for that. Bella graduated from Aurora College University in 1973 with majors in biology, psychology, along with chemistry minor. After graduation, he worked in the Department of Corrections Juvenile Division at Valley View Boys School for 3 years. After resigning his position at Valley View, he taught the sciences for 5 years at Waldo Junior High, then transferred from Waldo back to his alma mater at East Aurora High School in 1981. He was a teacher of biology and earth science at East for 24 years. He coached wrestling and was founder and coach of the soccer program at East High. He was also founder, coach, and president of the Fox Valley Kickers youth program from 1991 to 1999, and the club is still going strong today. Bela's book, From Tyranny to Liberty, tells the story of his family's history during and after their escape from communist Hungary. It also serves as reference for anyone looking to discern the difference between living in a free society and living in Eastern Europe behind the Iron Curtain. Bela's book provides a glimpse into what happened under totalitarian communism regimes after the end of World War II. He believes his family story is valuable to those who are interested in both our past and where our country is going. I'm so happy and excited to introduce Bela Suhayda and giving us a deeper understanding of life without freedoms to living a life of freedoms.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, Debbie.
You're welcome.
We saw Debbie at a restaurant and started talking. She told us about we're excited to be here. My wife Linda. And I'm excited to be here. I want to bring to you a story that my family managed to get out of the communist country. And that's basically the type of tyranny and liberty. What a lot of people that come from communism is figuring out is that they're going to go from liberty to tyranny here. That's a concern, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here when I say that. That's why we're here today, cooperating, coming together, keeping an eye on things that we was talking about. I want to relate to you a little bit on what is happening in this country and what happened in Hungary, what brought communism to Hungary. And then from there, I want to get into my story concerning our escape. Right now, we are living in 1917 Russia. 1917 Russia. That's in 1970 is when the Bolshevik Revolution starts. Vladimir Lenin led that revolution, and he had a kind of a plan for how he was going to change that country. Very successful. And the first domino that he made to fall in the pursuit of turning that country into a communist country was to divide it. And you guys understand that we are being divided. We're being divided along racial lines, divided along sex, we're divided vaccine versus non-vaccine, in every possible way. Freckles and no freckles, whatever they can find to divide us, they use. And so many people fall for it because they don't know enough about what's going on. Once, the way that Vladimir Lenin did it was by pitting the rich against the poor, or probably more like poor against the rich. And so you demonize people, you make people into something other than human. So when you can dehumanize people, then you can get people to hate. Get people that hate, you call them names like homophobes and transphobes and all of those other kinds of bigots and racists. Then you fracture society. mean, that's where we are. We're fracturing ourselves. And I'm a coach, so I understand this much about athletics and coaching. That is, your team has to come together. You have to be unified. If we're going to continue to allow these people, these leftists in our country, to divide us, we're in trouble. What we have to do is, we have to start unifying things. We have to start making this known that this is what's happening. And so division is one of the key things. That's the first thing that they try to do. They try to divide the people. Then, once the division has occurred, then they infiltrate all of the institutions. If you take a look at our federal government today, you'll see that our DOJ is politicized, our FBI is politicized, our IRS is politicized, our CIA is politicized. All of these institutions that are not supposed to be political have become political. And right now, and some of you are, David was talking about school boards. All of you probably understand by now that if you stand up in front of a school board today, you might get on a list. And that comes from Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland is the Attorney General. He got a memo from I think the National School Board to put him, to alert him as to what was going on with critical race theory in our schools, and that people were standing up and talking against that as being part of the curriculum. Well, Merrick Garland, within 1 week, responded to that memo from the National School Board and notified the FBI that they should be on the watch for what was going on. Now, perhaps there are some people that are doing some things that are, like threatening people or beating people up, perhaps. I don't know. But even so, you don't get the FBI involved in something local. There should be a separation between the federal government and what happens locally. But these people are trying to federalize everything, including our police departments. That's part of the reason the defunding is occurring, so that when the defunding occurs, there's failure. So when there's failure, they come in and say, okay, you guys aren't doing the job, we're going to do it for you. Our elections are now, within this Build Back the Shitter bill that they have certain kinds of laws that would be passed that all of our elections would be controlled from the federal government into all of our states. We've had federalism, which means that every state has their own laws. And every state has the right to determine their own election laws, many of which were ignored, especially the battleground states in 2020. This is the plan. We're going down this road that's going to lead to communism in this country. I'm convinced of that. I can't say that I experienced communism, but I did experience it, but I didn't know what it was. The people who told me about what communism was were my parents and my relatives. They taught me, and I've been back to Hungary, and even during the communist era, we were given amnesty so we could go back and we could visit with relatives. Their economy was in shambles. They needed tourism to bring their economies up. My wife and I went on our honeymoon in 1977 to Hungary. And when we came back, we were notified by our relatives there that we had been followed everywhere. We had KGB types. They weren't really KGB, but that, if you understand what that means, they're Secret Service following us around. Probably because of my father. My father did some things that not violent things, but he did some things in the early 70s that put everybody in his family on the radar when he came back in the country. But that's just kind of people they are. It is about control. You understand this control because we have COVID now. And believe me, I'm a biologist. I understand viruses. I understand immunology. I understand what is happening with this virus. is being used to control us. They lie to us about the effectiveness of vaccines. They lie to us about whether or not we can contract this virus after vaccinations or how the national immunities work, etc. Everything is being done to shut us down, to again, fracture us, to control us. And the excuse, well, you're going to die, or you're going to spread the virus. The masks are lunacy. Masks are lunacy. Again, I'm a science teacher. I understand the size of the openings in a mask versus the size of the virus. All you have to do is go outside and on a cold day with a mask on, blow some air out of your lungs, and you'll see a big, huge cloud. Those are all the water droplets that are condensing in the air. Every one of those would carry viruses. But the masks are being used to signal to other people whether you were on one side or the other. And I gotta say, I do the same thing. I look at a person with a mask on, and I'm thinking to myself, well, they're concerned, they're afraid. And I see a person with a mask on, I go, they know the story. So I make those judgments myself. We all do. But that's the purpose of it, is to, again, split us apart. The vaccine passports now. We have to have passports that are coming up because why? Well, because if you don't have it, the jab, then you can spread the virus. Well, guess what? People who have had the jab are contracting COVID. My brother-in-law is an example. He had COVID and natural, what we thought was natural immunity early on, in April of 2020. He got it again just a couple of weeks ago. This virus mutates. It's a retrovirus. It's an RNA virus. RNA is a very unstable molecule compared to DNA. Okay? And because it's an RNA virus, it will continually change form. And the vaccines that we're being vaccinated with now have no effect on the new variants because it's a different virus. This is the same thing as a common cold. We've never had vaccinations against the common cold. Why? Because it always changes. That's why we continue to have the common cold. You cannot create a vaccine for something that constantly mutates. We're always going to be behind it. You cannot forecast how it's going to change. I'm getting off on top, right? I'm a biology teacher, so I was going to bring graphs and things.
That's going to be the second time.
Second. Right. So getting back to how these people are trying to take this country over, and they're doing a very good job, by the way. They have us divided. They have us angry with each other. The infiltration into the different parts of our government, but it doesn't stop there. We have them in corporate America now. Take a look at the airlines. Take a look at professional sports. Take a look at Hollywood. Take a look at big tech. And big tech is the big one. Okay, because then they control our voices. And the biggest of them, and these are the propagandists, that's the mainstream media. Mainstream media spews propaganda constantly. One of the things my mom taught me about communists is that if they tell you something, turn it around. You've got the truth. Okay? And my mom used to say, if you told them that the sky was blue, they would say, no, it's yellow or it's green. But they would never, you never had, as a person that's living in a country, you never had the right to be right, to be correct. They decided what happened in those countries. They decided what was right, what was wrong. They became God. And this is why they fight against religion. Because they don't want us to have God. They want government to be the God. And so they're very jealous of power. And that's why Christianity in this country is in trouble. Well, our attendance to churches is dropping constantly. I'm going to just take a guess, probably in the 80s or so, she took a poll as to how many people we had identified as Christian. It was probably close to 80%. Now it's more like 60. What they've done with entertainment and with the popular culture is eroding our faith in God, country, and family. It's not a pretty picture. Once they've infiltrated, then comes the indoctrination. We've heard about the critical race theory. You've heard about 1619 project. They're rewriting history, and that's another thing that has to happen. They have to erase what we know and replace it with what they want us to know. Okay. All of these things are happening to us in this country, and local groups like ours here have to start doing something about this. It's too difficult to go and try to change the Senate or the House. We're very far away from that. We have to, I think, stay local. This country historically has been from the ground up. This is our base, the local level. If we can control this, the rest of it takes care of itself. As a young teacher, I had a mentor of mine who said to me, if you take care of the small things in your classroom, the big things will never happen. And that's true here as well. If we take care of the small things locally, if we make sure that our police departments are intact, if we make sure that we don't have corruption in our local municipalities, in all of our institutions, in our schools, etc., then if that happens everywhere in our country, we don't have to worry about the big stuff, because the big stuff will take care of itself. So I think we as a group here can do a lot to do things about what happens to this country, but every community in this country has to do the same. We have to come together, organize, and we have to start making sure that what's happening in our institutions is making America great, not hating America. This is the other thing that they constantly do, is they make our kids, our children, hate this country. They tell them about how horrible we are, how horrible we've been. Every country has horrible things in their history. I'm not going to diminish the bad things that have happened in this country. But this country is a great and good country. I can testify to that because I came to this country. And I can tell you that the American people, when we came, were wonderful to us. And this is the way I think that this is the only way in which people should come to this country as immigrants. They should be sponsored by some group. If we could sponsor a group coming in, or I should say a person coming in, or a family. When we came, we were sponsored by an organization in Upper Michigan. A Rotary Club there sponsored us. So when we came in, we weren't just like, okay, we got on a bus and we were just dropped off somewhere. That is inhuman. You don't do that to people. You don't allow people to walk through deserts and die of lack of water and food. You don't allow for people to come here and get trafficked. All of those things are happening on our border. It's inhuman to do that. This government doesn't care about the people that are coming here, even though they promised them everything. They don't care. They will die in the deserts. They will be trafficked. They will be made to bring drugs into our country that will kill our young people, etc. It's out of control. It's chaos. Total, absolute chaos. As an immigrant, I gotta say, and this is the way I see it, because you don't do this to people. We as I said, were brought in here and made sure that we succeeded. We found a job for my dad. He went to work. we started our lives over. Starting your life over at age 38. My dad was 38 at the time. My mom was 29. And to have nothing and then build from that, that's an undertaking. Learning the language, finding out how the systems work, etc. So, long story short, the way that immigration used to be done back in the 50s, in the 60s, was very humane, very good in terms of building successful people. That's not happening today. After the indoctrination, I digress by the way. So after indoctrination, is takeover. If we have a takeover occurring, we're very far down that line right now, too far. And it happens slowly but surely. It's a thing about gradualism. I make this analogy all the time because I'm a biology teacher. If you take a frog, it's an ectotherm, which means it's a cold-blooded organism. You put them into some water, and you heat that water up. The frog will stay in there until the water boils. The animal will not survive. Why is that? Because it's an ectotherm, so its body adjusts to the heat around it gradually. As the water increases, so does its body temperature, and they're very much similar, so he never notices that the animal never notices the change in the water. We have been sitting in this water for a long time. We are seeing our country change. We have seen our Constitution suspended. These mandates are unconstitutional. We have 3 Supreme Court justices who don't even understand what the stats are on this virus, or where it came from, or anything
We found
else.
that out.
Sotomayor.
Yeah. Oh,
Again, I'm preaching the choir, right? Sotomayor comes out and says there's 100,000 children in our hospitals, and it ends up to be about 3.5. And most of those children are not there for COVID. They might have tested positive, but they're in for other things. And that's just one stat that she just, but that's a personal Obama pointing. She has an agenda. The Supreme Court of the United States is not supposed to be a political body. It's not supposed to be advocating for one side or the other. Their duty is to make sure that whatever laws are passed are constitutional, according to the Constitution. And what's the purpose of our Constitution? To make sure that we are in control of our country. It's designed so that government is controlled. They cannot overstep their authorities. If they overstep their authorities and become unconstitutional, then they don't get to do that. That's what the Constitution is all about. Countries that have no freedom do not have a constitution because governments can do anything they want. Our Constitution is supposed to protect us from a government that oversteps its boundaries. And right now, they are at a point where, okay, we're going to wrestle you down and we're going to inject a vaccine into your arm. Because you have to, because if you don't do that, you're a murderer. That's how insane this has gotten. And we still haven't moved up. It's to me, it's a scary thing because, and maybe you remember this guy, he was Cuban, and he was speaking of the Republican National Committee convention. He was Cuban, and he was saying things like, I hope I don't have to live under communism twice in my life. He had fled Cuba and come here. And I thought, amen, brother. I know exactly what you're saying because I'm seeing this and it's scary. And I sometimes talk to a friend, did you hear what they just said? And she says, yep. It's a very scary thing to watch because this country of all countries in the world has been the beacon of freedom. We've lost that. We're past that. We've got to bring it back. This next midterm election is going to be very, very important. We have to make sure that our election laws are enforced with poll watchers, with law enforcement to make sure that things aren't happening that shouldn't be happening, because these people will continue to steal. Communists and communist organizations will, well, they don't think that they do anything wrong as long as what they're doing is going to get their agenda moving in that direction. They are very, very determined to make sure that this country goes the way they want. And they will continue to do these things that they've been doing for as long as they may have to until that frog starts to boil. With that, I will stop and you get to my story, I guess. How much time do we got?
You're fine.
Fine?
Hey,
One of the things that they've been,
Before I forget, he has books, everybody, and they're sitting right over the table, and Brenda will be over there to help you with them, and he'll sign them. So after we're done, I forgot to say that. They're $15 a piece.
one of the things that they've done for COVID, by the way, Jane Fonda was exactly right on with this. And I don't know if you know about what she said about COVID. That COVID was the greatest gift the Democrat Party could ever have gotten.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And by the way,
And only Jane.
and by the way, this thing came from a lab. And by the way, our taxpayer dollars paid for it.
Yes.
And Mr. Fauci, Dr. Fauci, made sure that this happened. Watch the debate between Rand Paul and Tony Fauci. Rand Paul knows who this man is.
Yes, he does. So does Julie
Yes.
Mikovich.
And if you watch those, you watch Fauci squirm because he knows that Rand Paul is onto him. And in fact, the information is there. It's all in the emails. His communications, the money that was sent there, and gain of function research. Gain of function research produced this virus. And how do we know that? Because there are certain gene loops in the RNA of this virus that are found nowhere else in nature except for this virus. If you make a genome of this virus, you understand it is unique. It's the only one of its kind anywhere. You don't find it anywhere else. Another way you can find out whether it's in the lab or not, all you have to do is go out there and catch the bats in that area and take a blood sample. See if any of those bats have the virus. They won't do that research. High school kids can do this, but they won't do it. Why? Because they would be found out.
Yes.
So, to my story. They will tell you, they have told us, that we should report anybody in our neighborhoods, our neighbors, who is having big parties. Remember that? Very early on. Now they're telling us you can't have Christmas, you can't have Easter, you can't have New Year's Eve, you can't have Thanksgiving. No, and again, fracture, take away rights, get them used to sitting around, not being able to do things and going places. This is the way they do it. And we're living it right now. Okay. So we were supposed to be watching other US citizens. They don't need any spies if every one of us is a potential spy. What does that do? Then people start looking around and they get a little paranoid. What am I doing? Maybe my neighbor will see me having a party. That's not a good thing. And it puts a paranoia into the society. If everybody in your neighborhood could be a potential spy, then you start behaving a little different, a little bit more skeptical, or a little bit more suspicious. That's what they want. They want us that way. They want us fearful. They want us paranoid. They want us scared. That's how you prevent people from coming together like this and saying, we gotta do something. I'm gonna take it back then to the morning that we left our house, my grandmother's house, actually. It was November 20th. I couldn't sleep. My parents were fighting. My dad said, "We're going." My mom said, "No, that." Okay. Robert, you guys see Rebecca? That, yeah. So my parents were fighting, and when my parents were fighting, I didn't sleep. It bothered me. About 4 o'clock in the morning, my mom comes to the two brothers I have, and there was a niece, my dad's niece is also with us. My mom comes in, she says, "Get dressed, we're going on a trip." My dad won the fight. And usually he did. They were both stubborn as hell. But usually in these situations, my mom relented and my dad won. And so we're getting dressed, and my mom packs 3 suitcases, and at 4 in the morning we step out of the house to return. My grandmother wasn't there. My grandmother had gone to my uncle's house because she was very upset about what my dad was planning. Understand that there is that mandate out to everybody in the small village that if you see anything suspicious happening, report it. The whole family with suitcases going to the train station at this time of that country means that they're up to something nefarious. Okay. So that's why we got to cover darkness. This is November 20th. It's dark at 4 in the morning. So we are walking to the train station, which is about 2-3 miles away. And we have to walk all the way through the village. We're at one end of the railroad station was on the opposite side, we're a couple of miles outside of the village. And so, by the way, there's no cars in this country. It's a very, very poor country. A Hungarian couldn't even possibly think of owning a car. If a Hungarian owns a bicycle, that's great. Understand that there's starvation in this country at this point. The Soviet Union had invaded Hungary. FDR gave his approval. Go ahead, take Eastern Europe. Stalin, you're fine. We're both socialists. That's okay. Okay, I'm serious. FDR was a socialist, and he got along better with Stalin than he did with Churchill. It's a very, very, very poor country. So the only mode of transportation is bicycle, or if it's long distance, it's railroad. So we're going to be going to we're trying to get across the border in Austria. We're in the southwestern part of Hungary. We have to go to the northwest border to get to Austria. But there's a train that's going to take us there. We get to the train station and we board the train, and we're told that this trip is going to be about 2 hours to the first stop, which normally would have been like 20 minutes. But this time it's going to be about 2 hours. And they tell us why. They say that this line going from where we are up along that side of the country, the western side of the country, the train tracks may be mined to prevent people from escaping along this line. Okay. And they blame, by the way, they blame the freedom fighters. The freedom fighters have put down the landmines, which in my parents' giggle probably, because the freedom fighters want people to leave this place. They want to get the communists off our backs. They want the Russians to go back to Russia. They wouldn't be preventing anyone from leaving. In fact, that's what they would want people to do. just, at this point, by the way, the revolution had failed. The tanks had rolled back into Hungary, thousands of them, and they blew up Budapest, which is our capital. They killed 3,000 people in Budapest alone to put down the revolt. So we're actually trying to leave this country after the revolution's over, which is why my mom was so concerned. She was like, "That's too late. We should have done that 2 weeks ago, when the borders were probably not being guarded." But now she knows, and everybody knows, the borders are being guarded right now. And so how are we going to get out of this? You're going to take 3 children with you across the border that is guarded, and of course, with the fate of the person trying to cross that border is a bullet through the head. They didn't mess around. Their orders were to shoot to kill everybody trying to leave. Again, indicating to you how wonderful a life you live with communism. If they have to go to those extremes to keep people in the country, you know it's not a very good country. But so anyway, it takes about 2 hours to get to our first stop, and there we have to wait for a long time. The reason why the train is moving so slowly is because those people who were working with the resistance were actually the ones that were took another locomotive and push it out over the tracks in front of the train with people in it. And they would push a couple of cars of full of sand over to give weight so that if it hit something or if it compressed the tracks and it detonated the tracks, then people would be far enough back that somebody would. So this is what they were doing. The Hungarian people were trying to counteract what they were threatening by pushing these cars full of sand out in front of the trains. So 2 hours it took us to get the first. We stayed there until about 8 at night. So we got there about say about 6 or 7 in the morning, and we left at 8 at night to the next stop. As we're making our next trip to the next stop was Barch. Barch was the neighborhood town, and we're picking up passengers along the way in different towns. Many of these people are young men. They're not with families. They're mostly young men. And every once in a while, when the train stops, these young men get off, and they never come back again. My dad's watching this carefully because he knows this is very unusual. These young men are talking to the conductor and asking, he's kind of eavesdropping, what are they talking about? But what they were talking about was where were there good places to get off the train to get to the border. And at this point, we're very close to Croatia, which was then Yugoslavia. So if they get off the trains, they would run for the border, basically, not the tacos. So that depending on the report they would get, they would either stay or they would leave. And as people got on, got off, interestingly enough, because of the threat of these landmines underneath the tracks, the trains moved slowly, which made it very easy to get on or off. So even though they were discouraging people from going, the more bold individuals, the more bold people who were bound and determined to leave, they actually made it easier for them. They didn't have to get off a train moving at 50 miles an hour. They could get off a train going at 5 miles an hour. And sometimes the train would stop. So a lot of these people were escaping to Yugoslavia. Now, Yugoslavia was a communist country, but it was not associated with Moscow. Tito was the name of the guy that ran Yugoslavia. And Tito was an independent commie. He wasn't any better than any of the other communists, but at least he was independent. And my father thought, I don't trust him. Because if we escape into Yugoslavia, what's to say that Tito, to get good favor with Moscow, is not going to return up there back to Hungary? If that happened, then you were jailed probably for for basically being a traitor. Or in some cases, probably executed, depending on what crimes they might put on you. So, but my dad kind of put that in the back of his head a little bit because he had plans not to take the family to Yugoslavia. He wanted to take us to Austria. Now, Austria was also behind the Iron Curtain until 1955. For whatever reason, I haven't found out yet. The Soviet Union took its troops out of Austria. I'm asking a person right now why that happened. A young couple, we had a young couple this weekend, or a couple days ago, I should say, and they're from Austria, and I wrote a little note saying, tell them he's a history student down in Champaign, and so maybe he's going to tell me. But anyway, 1955, they got their independence from the Soviet Union. They were no longer behind the Iron Curtain. And so that's why my dad's going and wants us to go all the way there. It's a long trip. Along the way, the next stop that we have is Sobot. And in that process, March, which is the stop before, we have all kinds of elderly people, some women and men who are bringing all kinds of produce onto the train. And there's going to be a farmer's market in somebody the next day. And so all these people are coming in with their produce, and they're going to sell these things. Along with these are also these young men that are trying to leave. And when we get to the next stop, which is somebody there is a checkpoint. We didn't know there was going to be a checkpoint, but this became a checkpoint. And the AVO, which are the Secret Service, came onto the train and said, everybody's got to get off. You're going to go through a kind of a determination as to what you're doing, why you're doing it. We want to know where you're going, what you're going to see, blah, blah, blah. So, of course, we're trying to escape. So my parents had to make up a little story and actually plan out what we were going to say, how we were going to say it, blah, blah, blah. Well, when we got off, big lines, and everybody was kind of waiting their turn. They had an area where the interrogations were going to be occurring behind these roped off areas. And just so happened my mom forgot the ultimate destination that we were going to. She couldn't remember what my dad had told her to say, which was not a good thing, because if these guys are keeping notes and they see there's a discrepancy in our story, then there's going to be more questions, and we're not getting back on the train. We're going to be held over for questioning and investigation. And these, by the way, these people don't need any reasons to suspicious of you. They can just make up, manufacture things, just like they're doing with the January 6th thing right now. Those people are not getting justice. Some of those people were just on the steps of the Capitol, and they've been in jail now ever since they were there. We have political prisoners now in this country. Third world country. So anyway, my mom creates an alternate story just in case they notice the discrepancy. My brothers and I are with my mom. My dad kind of separates in a separate line with his niece. So that way the collaboration could occur. It couldn't find out that our stories didn't match. Everything works out fine. We wait there, and next morning we get back on the train. The next morning, there's no security. When we came to the train station, there's no security, which was a very big surprise. We thought they would have to go through some more, hoops. We get to we start off, it's about 8 o'clock in the morning when the train starts. My dad now starts to consider what he needs to find out in terms of where we're going to get off and where we're going to cross the South Street. We're now far enough northwest so that, that there are several different places and several different stops where we could probably cross the Austrian border. Remembering what we had seen with these other young men, the conversations with the conductor, he kind of sizes up one of the conductors and starts a little bit of small talk, and finally gets to, hey, we need information, kind of thing. Taking a huge chance because if this guy is a communist sympathizer, trips over. Next stop, people are going to be getting on to arrest us rather than going down the street. So, and the guy says, well, you know, I don't want to look like I'm helping you. I will tell you, but not verbally, where you can get off. He says, I'll be outside the train. And if it's a good place, I'll talk to the manager of the station. And if it just so happens that it's a good place, then I will give a nod in the affirmative. And if it's not a good place, then he's going to shake his head that way. So he said, watch me, and I will tell you where you can get off. So we are going, and there's about 11 stops between where we are at this point and the termination of this line. Once the train gets to the last station, it's going to turn back around. That's it. So one of these 11 spots along this railway is going to have to be a good place to get off. And if it's not, then we run back home. So we get to 5, 6, 7, let's know, 8, 9, 10, 11. He says yes. So we get all our stuff together, and the conductor even holds up the train. So we have there's 3 kids, 3 suitcases, and 3 adults. And, so it's and interestingly enough, everybody in the car knew what we were doing. They were kind of like saying, "Good luck," patting us on the back. They knew they had seen this played out many times before. The last month or so, people escaping this route. And so we get off the train, and my dad goes over to the manager who's bringing up the railroad burial, railroad crossing. And so he's cranking that gate up by hand. So my dad goes that way. There's a farmer in an ox cart on the other side of the station. It's a very small station, and we're sitting with luggage, and just kind of standing there. All the other people that came off the train went off into town, and we're kind of sitting there, very conspicuous. Not a good thing to be conspicuous in this situation. The old man in the ox cart yells out, "You need a ride." And my mom doesn't respond. She doesn't want to talk to anybody at this point. We don't know who this guy is, what he wants. Perhaps he's also an informant. He's out here. Again, paranoia. And so the guy asks again. Right. Yeah. My mom gets the courage to say, yeah, we need a ride. My dad hears the conversation, asks the manager, "Is that guy reliable?" And the manager says, "He's reliable." It's a small town, everybody knows everybody else. So again, but we have to trust this. It's not, you know, you can imagine being in a situation where you're going to have to trust somebody. And if you're wrong, you end up in a firing squad, not quite possible. And so my dad comes back to us and we go to the wagon. The old man says, "Yeah, the kids can come up, put your luggage up here." It's a ox cart. They bales of hay. Okay, we're sitting on hay. It's a really nice ride. The road is really rough, you know, but when you're on top of a lot of hay, everything kind of swings. It's really nice. It's fun. But anyway, so we have a hay ride. It says it's got a cow that is harvested. So it's not a very powerful animal. He says I can't have the adults come up because the animal can't pull that much weight. It's already at its limits right now, or she is. And so my parents follow along walking as we are up on the haystack enjoying ourselves. Then it becomes very apparent that the farmer is taking us out of town, away from town, rather than into town. And so my mom says, well, are we going to town? And he stops. He goes, you want to go to town? You want to go into town? He has already figured this out. This is a family that wants to leave. So he's just assumed that he's taking us to the border. And he says, no, this is the time for you to go. My dad says, well, we were planning on leaving at night, cover of darkness. And he goes, no, that's when the Russians are guarding, snipers in towers. They also have Stalin flares, they're called. It's phosphorescent stuff. They shoot it in the air, and it lights up the entire place, and then they just pick people up. So the farmer says, this is the time to go. Right now, it's the Hungarians guarding the border. At night, it'll be the Russians. They'll kill you. The Hungarians may let you go. Maybe. That's what we got to deal with. So my parents talked quickly, and okay, we're time for thinking that at this point we gotta go. So we're on our way, and we head up a dirt road, up a hill. It's a cornfield, and we're on the road for maybe a quarter mile, and very quickly the old man takes evasive action and takes their cart, and I think into the corn behind a little hill. And just as he does that, 15 or 20 seconds later, this Jeep comes up the road. And it was a Jeep full of Russian guards. They don't see us, which is we saw them, they didn't see us, which is the key thing here. And so the old man says, quiet, we're going to stay here for a while. When it's clear, we'll get back on the road. And so we wait, he waits until you can't even hear the motor, get back on, and we continue. And about another couple of hundred yards, there's a couple of military-looking people that come up over the horizon. It's kind of a hilly place. And so you can't see you, you see a lot of blind spots. And so we see these two, we didn't see them. The old man, he's kind of perched up a little higher because he's on his seat. And he stops the car, and my parents see the guards, they're coming towards us. And at this point, the old man gets off, and he meets them kind of in a proactive position. He kind of goes up and he starts to talk to them, brings them back to the wagon. At this point, then my dad engages them in conversation. My dad was a fighter pilot in the Hungarian Air Force. He flew against the Russians, which was the other reason why he was in a very bad way. His records were destroyed. Had the Russians known what he did during the war, he would have been executed. He's a fighter pilot. He takes a lot of chances. That's why we're going. That's why my mom lost the argument. He's a person of action. He does things. He knows he's got to do things to improve his life. And if his life is horrible, his children will be blackmailed as well, blackballed, I should say, and they're not going to. That's basically why we're doing this. There's no future for his family or for him. So anyway, the conversation takes place. My dad takes out about 2/3 of his money, I later found out, takes out 2/3 of his money, and he gives 1/3 to one of the guards and 1/3 to the other. It's a bribe, very obvious bribe. He doesn't make any bones about it. Here you go. Which way do we go? And the guards say, how straight is that one? Have a nice day. And so we get back on the cart, and another 100 yards or so, and the old man says, I can't go any further. From this point on, you're on your own. He says, if they see me this close to the border, they'll shoot me. He says, so good luck. You know which way to go. Good luck. So at this point, we gather around. My dad gets us around. Usually we're in trouble because he gets us 3 boys together in front of him. Usually that's an interrogation. Okay, what do you guys do? Right. In this case, he's giving us instructions. He says, we're going to move quickly. Stay up with me. No talking. We're not stopping for anything. Okay. Now I hadn't gone to the bathroom since 8 o'clock this morning. And so when he says we are not stopping for anything, don't talk, nothing, I hold my mouth and I hold my ear. And we start to go. There comes a point where you can't hold it anymore. So my shoes fill with a lot of warmth. It was cold, kind of a little bit, but I got warm real quick. But anyway, I'm mortified because my mom's got my younger brother. My cousin's got me by the hand, and my older brother's with my dad in the front. And so I'm mortified. I just peed my pants. My cousin is, but she doesn't say anything. She doesn't even care. So I think, well, if they don't care, I don't care. So here we go. And so my dad stops every once in a while. Come on. And I was trying to get us to go and slow it down, and then he speeds up again. And then he stops. He stops in front of the sign. The sign, skull and crossbones. And it says, area mind. We should not be crossing area mind. I mean, I'm a second grader, so I can read and I understand. And our parents basically already have told us what this is about. We have a foot for 7, 8, 9-year-old kids. We know what about is best in 7, 8, 9-year-old kids. I didn't trust my parents to give us food, so I wasn't mortified in fear. But I trusted that my parents would give us. So I had that comfort. But, it was a dicey situation. So when he reads that sign, my mom obviously reads it well. My mom pulls him off to the side and said, no, we're not doing this. And he goes, trust me, we'll get through this. So he explains to her and explains to us too, walk in my footsteps. I step, you step. He's a military man, so he has been trained to look for this situation. He's going to step in places where it looks like other people may have stepped, places that are undisturbed, where if landmines are going to put down, there's a certain kind of not very natural looking area. So he only goes to places that look like it's established in terms of plant life. There are some footprints inside, so many other people have made this same trek as we were making. The forest is kind of played, and so where we see footsteps, now I don't know how far this area was, or how much this area was mined. There was not going to be any kind of sign telling us that it's okay. So all we know is that there could be landmines here anywhere. We're walking through this area, and I lost track of time a little bit because I'm a little bit scared about what's going on. I know what landmines are. We start to hear voices. And at this point, we think we've been caught. Somebody can see us. They're coming to get us. So we kind of hunker down. We're waiting but the voices aren't coming any closer. And then we hear women's voices. And at this time in history of war and border guards and things like that, you're not going to necessarily hear women. So that's a good sign. So we start to move towards the voices, trying to catch what language they're speaking. If this is German, we're headed towards Austria. If it's Hungarian, we may be a misstep and we go in the right direction, and we're back in Hungary. And my mom, and all of a sudden says, "These are Croatians." My mom spoke 4 languages, and Serbian was her second language because she was born in Yugoslavia. She was of German parentage, so she learned German first. She learned Serbian when she went to school. She learned Hungarian when my grandfather took her to Hungary, and she didn't learn English when she got here. Anyway, she's listening. It's Croatian. It's a dialect of Serbia. It's not exactly the same, but it's very close. And we're looking at each other like, wait, Yugoslavia's back there. Why we're not on the Yugoslav border? We keep on walking, and we come out of the forest. And we're kind of very slowly coming out because we don't know what might be in the clearings. And we see these people about 100 yards or so in further towards a big, it looks like a cornfield that you have to harvest. And then my mom, a very frightened voice, comes up and we gotta go, we gotta leave this place. She spotted a young man face down, shot to death, 20 yards from us. He had probably left the night before, shot, whether he was shot going across the border or whether he was shot after he got into Austrian territory. We don't know. But these people we have been hearing all this time knew that the body was there, this person was shot. So they were concerned that we may also suffer the same fate. So they're kind of urging us to get down. Other ones are going for this. So we kind of understand that they want us to leave the area. We knew it was Austrian, by the way, because we saw the flag. The Austrian people had actually set up a line of flags, red, white, red. That's the Austrian flag. And so that's why we knew it was Austrian. We saw these flags. And so we headed towards these people. We hunkered down, we got real low again, and we got to these people. They were overjoyed that we had survived. And they put us into some carts and a little diesel truck that took us into town. So that's our escape. From there, we went to a Catholic church. It was a monastery. They put us up for about 3 weeks. From there, we went to the North Atlantic. And, took a boat. We were on the high seas for 2 weeks. Came into New Jersey and got processed. Then off to what the government in those days was doing was they basically got everybody to tell them what occupation they thought they could do. And the corporations and businesses in many different states go in indicating what kind of people were employ. So not only did treated very well and got fed and got entertainment. Also got good transportation set up to got mission, which is the Rotary Club actually got us a home to live with for a short time. the school built, where the school was. So we could only be in the house for about 3 months until, this is January. So that property is going until about April. So we got, like, dad was a job to do, started to make some money, we rented a house. And from there,